Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, Dynasty League, PPR League, IDP League, even Daily Fantasy Football League. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And I am your host, Ryan Basulto. We have a good day to talk about fantasy football. We are actually going to talk about and break down tournament style, each position on which I feel you should get first. And we'll see who the champion is of each position. We're going to put running backs to start. Then we're going to do receivers, then quarterbacks, then tight ends on all four of these segments. So each one is going to go through a bracket-style tournament, just like I did in the previous episode, to be the number one overall pick. But this one, we're going to go more in depth on each position as opposed to, let's just see who's going to be the number one overall pick and have them all together. No, we're going to go, should I pick this running back over this running back? And this tournament style is going to help you. I chose this tournament style because we are actually in the ending of March Madness, the NCAA tournament. I don't know if you guys watch college basketball, but it has been very exciting. It's been all over the place. The number 11 seed UCLA almost made it to the championship, but lost in overtime on a crazy half-court shot buzzer beater made by point guard Jalen Suggs. Future, as I say, is all-star point guard. If you hear about that and him in the NBA, make sure to go check him out because I promise you Jalen Suggs is going to be an animal. Second pick in the draft behind Cade Cunningham. But that's besides the point. Gonzaga, the number one seed, is going to face Baylor, the other number one seed, who crushed Houston in their Final Four matchup. They're meeting up to be the highest win percentage of any duo in NCAA men's tournament history. So basically, it's a 96% chance. They have a 96% win percentage. Gonzaga is undefeated. They have not lost all year. Only a couple teams have done that, like UCLA when they were winning with John Wooden all the time and Lou Alcindor, which is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar if you didn't know. But all those legends that they had, and Bill Walton, they were winning a lot. A lot of these people and names have been made through this March Madness. It's going to be exciting to see who wins the championship between Gonzaga and Baylor. I would say Gonzaga is just going to pull off the perfect season because even though they've had weak scheduling, they have been benefited by great play. No, not they have been benefited. They have been benefited by the scheduling, but their great play is leading them to championship style ball. They're probably going to win. UCLA was the best chance to knock them off because of their tough style of defense. But that is all college basketball. So we are going to get into the March Madness edition of fantasy football. We're going to talk about running backs. Then we're going to do receivers the next one. Then we're going to do quarterbacks. Then we are going to do tight ends. So let's start off with running backs. The first people on the side of the bracket are Aaron Jones, running back of the Green Bay Packers, the 5th ranked running back in fantasy football, according to ESPN PPR format. Like I said, PPR format is the best format just for the simple fact that you get more points. So more points equal more scoring. Why wouldn't you want more scoring? It's not like it's weak. You're getting points per actual catches. I know it's weak when you get a guy who gets 10 catches for 60 yards, and he still gets 16 fantasy points because of those 10 catches. But, it adds a different element, an element I like a lot. Aaron Jones, 201 rushes, 1,104 yards rushing, 9 rushes on the ground, 247 fantasy points. Russell Wilson. Aaron Jones is a very, very, very good running back. Don't get me wrong. I just really don't like that he has to share time with A.J. Dillon in this next upcoming season. A.J. Dillon wasn't even a top 30 running back, but Jamal Williams was a top 20 fantasy running back. So that's what you figure they're going to do with A.J. Dillon. Aaron Jones is going against Dalvin Cook in the first round. Dalvin Cook, the number 2 fantasy running back, rushed 312 times for 1,500 yards and 16 touches on the ground. Dalvin Cook is the clear-cut running back 1. They just let go of Mike Boone, their backup running back. They don't have Alexander Madison right now. They haven't signed him to a deal. So, Dalvin Cook is a number 1 back in an offense that wants to run the ball first. That's what they've been. They've been a number 1. They were the number 2 rushing offense this year. Number 3 rushing offense, behind the Titans and the Baltimore Ravens, who obviously the Baltimore Ravens are crazy. But Dalvin Cook is definitely better choice than Aaron Jones out of fantasy running backs, just because I think of the volume he gets. I know he could get hurt. Aaron Jones isn't an every down back. Dalvin Cook is. Aaron Jones is small. He's under 6 foot. He gets hurt a lot. And I know Dalvin Cook gets hurt a lot, but Aaron Jones is not big enough to be a 3-down back. That is why they have a bruiser like A.J. Dillon. I figure if anyone's going to get goal line work, it's going to be A.J. Dillon. If Aaron Jones is going to get touchdowns, it has to be from long plays, which he could do. He's capable of in that offense, but I see Dalvin Cook with more of the upside from the NFC North matchup there. Now we got Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus Run CMC, a.k.a. Christian McCaffrey. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is someone I'm very high on. He was a 22 ranked running back out of everyone in the ESPN PPR format. 181 only rushes, 803 yards, and 4 touchdowns. You just don't like it because that wasn't a lot. And you saw that they quickly replaced him with Le'Veon Bell. You don't know if that's going to work for him in the long run. But you can't forget that that Patrick Mahomes is the one that vouched for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's the one that said, we got to draft this guy. We got him. You don't vouch for someone as the star quarterback, and then they pick him. They didn't pick him in the second round. They picked him in the first round. Granted, it was the last pick of the first round, but they picked him with their first pick in the first round. That should show you how much faith they have in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But Run CMC, Christian McCaffrey, they added Sam Darnold back there, so Sam Darnold is going to be a more viable quarterback. He likes to check down. He's also a mobile quarterback, so him paired with Christian McCaffrey is a good combo as opposed to Teddy Bridgewater. He's more made of glass. That line of Christian McCaffrey's is a little better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire's line, and I'm a little scared just because they got rid of Eric Fisher on their starting line, and they also got rid of their left tackle and their right tackle on the Kansas City Chiefs line. And I know they saw Kyle Long, who just came out of retirement from the Bears. But I feel that Christian McCaffrey has a better line. He's going to get the ball more because just Matt Rule with that college offense. You got to think, in college offenses, when college coaches go to the pro level, they want to implement their crazy, wacky offense. That doesn't always translate to the pro level, which is what Matt Rule did last year. Didn't translate with the personnel that he had. He has to learn how to work around his personnel more. Ron Rivera kind of made the blueprint that, hey, let's milk Christian McCaffrey for everything he's got. Let's milk him for everything he's absolutely got. I think that they're going to do that again this year. And even though Clyde Edwards-Helaire will have over 10 touchdowns, will end up being worth it as a, I would say, second round, late first round pick, early second round. But he is not a top pick like Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is definitely going to have DJ Moore, who is a 1,000-yard receiver, another 1,000-yard receiver on the other side. They lost Curtis Samuel, so that's less rushing in the backfield. They don't have Mike Davis looming over him because Mike Davis just went to the Atlanta Falcons. Christian McCaffrey, I like that a lot better because Andy Reid likes to always throw in another running back. So Darrell Williams, or not Damian Williams anymore, but at least Darrell still gets on average 8 to 15 touches, depending on if Clyde Edwards-Helaire got hurt. He got a lower leg injury last year. We'll see how he bounces back, but Christian McCaffrey I still have higher. Let's talk about the next people on my list. Josh Jacobs, running back of the Oakland Raiders. He now has to split time with Kenyon Drake, another top running back. People actually had them drafted in their first round last year. They both had they had Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs projected as first rounders, maybe early second rounders, but now they're both on the same team. Josh Jacobs was the 8th ranked running back last year, 1,000 rushing yards, 1,065 to be exact, 12 touchdowns on the ground. He rushed 273 times, but you figure that's going to get, brought back a bit because Kenyon Drake rushed 239 times for 955 yards and 10 touchdowns. I know that they want him more in the pass-catching Jalen Richard role. That's what they want Kenyon Drake in. But Josh Jacobs is going to get most of this groundwork, and he's going to get a lot of touches. You see his carries. He went over 25 carries 1, 2, 3, 4 times throughout the year, which is an insane amount of carries. And then over 20 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times last year in fantasy football. His best game was obviously the first game of the year, 3 touchdowns. He fell off a bit because he was going against better defenses. He was going against the Bills. He's going against the Patriots. Went against the Bucks. Then he went against the Browns. But then he went to the Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs, and the Falcons was a little surprising. But Josh Jacobs, the Falcons, he got 7 rushes for 27 yards and 4 total fantasy points. But Josh Jacobs has a good matchups in his division. I don't think the Chargers defense is that great. The Broncos defense is better. The Chiefs defense isn't a premier rush defense. They're bottom 15. Josh Jacobs should be good next year, but let's talk about Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb also has to split carries with his boy, Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is a good running back, granted, that's true. But Nick Chubb had 190 rushes for 1,067 yards. He had 10 plus 73. Sorry, my math is terrible. 83 less rushes with more rushing yards than Josh Jacobs. Nick Chubb was hurt for a good amount of the year, but he still had 12 rushing touchdowns on the ground. That's more than Josh Jacobs as well. Nick Chubb is definitely someone, if he was healthy throughout the whole year, top 5 fantasy player. No doubt. Even with Kareem Hunt, Steven Stefanski figured how to, balance him out. Nick Chubb, without a doubt, I would take him over Josh Jacobs in a heartbeat. Josh Jacobs is eliminated with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Aaron Jones. We're going to talk about Jonathan Taylor, running back who also has to split a lot of carries between his fellow running backs, but he was still the 6th ranked fantasy running back last year with 232 rushes for 1,169 yards and 11 touchdowns. The number 1 Pro Football Focus ranked offensive line helped Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines give us good fantasy value last year. Jonathan Taylor is going against David Montgomery, another good running back. But now that they said that Andy Dalton is their boy in the Chicago Bears organization, I don't understand it. I just don't understand. They're saying that they're excited about Andy Dalton and that they could do anything as long as he gives them, quote unquote, capable play. So if you just go out there and throw the ball normal like Mitchell Trubisky was doing, they should be better? It's not even their fault, Mitchell Trubisky's fault, that everyone's giving him all this grief. It doesn't make any sense. It's the Bears' fault that they drafted. They didn't even just draft Mitchell Trubisky. They moved up in the draft to draft Mitchell Trubisky over Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, and that's their screw up, and they're blaming it, and they were goading it and making Mitchell Trubisky outcasted and put him out on the island. So now they're stuck with Dave Montgomery, the 4th-ranked running back last year, who had 247 rushing yards, 247 rushes for 1,070 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. He's someone who gets hurt, but like I said, last part of the season, he played against the Packers twice, the Lions, and the Vikings. And guess what? He plays them all again this year because he's in their division. 25 fantasy points, 26 fantasy points, 28 fantasy points, 27 fantasy points. All against division foes. If you want me to say the Week 14 matchup against the Texans, 24 fantasy points, and the Jaguars, Week 16 matchup, 19 fantasy points, that's what he got from Week 12 to 17. He closed out the year strong. That's what we like in fantasy football. Jonathan Taylor also had Marlon Mack added to his backfield. That's kind of an if, but Jonathan Taylor is still better option than Dave Montgomery because I believe in Carson Wentz a little bit more than I believe in Dalton. And it's not even much. It's not even much. Carson Wentz, that's a run-heavy offense. The Bears also do that, but I feel like if Dalton gets hurt, they're just going to throw Nick Foles back there. It's going to be a whole, parade back there. The Bears have a top 10 offensive line, rushing-wise, but their line is not the number 1 Pro Football Focus ranked offensive line like the Indianapolis Colts. So I got Jonathan Taylor over David Montgomery. David Montgomery's mix. And the last matchup of round 1, Joe Mixon versus Derrick Henry. This one is like your Baylor going against, I can't even say Loyola Chicago anymore, Colgate. That's your top college, number 1 college going against the weak college. Joe Mixon gave you nothing last year. He only rushed for over 400 rushing yards. Derrick Henry rushed for over 2,000 yards as he became he led the second overall rush offense. That's what he did, right behind the Baltimore Ravens, because obviously that's all they do all day. He rushed for over 2,000 yards. Only 8 people have done that before him. He won Offensive Player of the Year. He was the number 3 ranked running back in fantasy football. There's not much more you could say than, wow, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, it's kind of not even close. It's just all Derrick Henry. And that's exactly what I'm saying. Derrick Henry is the man. And yeah, 321 fantasy points, 17 touchdowns. 17 touchdowns. That's more than Dalvin Cook. So Derrick Henry, also with a great line on the Texans, is the clear-cut running back, rushing for 378 times last year. Expect that workload to happen again. Let's move on to the second round now. As we are breaking it down, we're putting all these fantasy running backs in bracket-style format and facing them off against each other to see who would make it to the next round. Oh, I forgot to mention, Chris Carson, Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler, I feel like is going to have a bounce-back year. Austin Eckler, Chris Carson just got re-signed with the Seattle Seahawks. They don't know what they're doing there. It seems a little chaotic. Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll seem like they're on the fringe. I'm staying away from that toxic relationship. Justin Herbert just came in. There's a lot of hope in that Chargers organization with Justin Herbert. Austin Eckler is definitely the running back to go. Chris Carson is eliminated. So now we're going on to the second round. As I said, we're putting running backs in a bracket like March Madness, and then we're breaking it down with their fantasy numbers and their certain situation on who should be the number 1 or who should be one of the top fantasy running backs. And for all you people that are like, oh, Alvin Kamara's not on it. Yeah, Alvin Kamara's not on it because he's obviously the number 1 pick. That's just what it is. Don't even say that. Alvin Kamara is the obvious number 1 pick. There's no one else better than him. That's just what it is. That is what it is. He catches the ball. He's at least averaged 80 yards, 80 receptions per year the first 4 years of his career. Alvin Kamara is nothing but consistent. He has a backfield that is completely his. He's one of the most versatile and agile running backs in the league, if not the most. The Tennessee product's the number 1 pick. Let's move on. Dalvin Cook versus Run CMC. Dalvin Cook, like I said, 16 touchdowns on the ground, 1,500 yards. CMC is poised for a good comeback, though. He's poised for a really, really good comeback. I don't know who I would take. Psych. I know exactly who I'd take. I am taking Dalvin Cook because Dalvin Cook is the number 1 guy. He's rushed over 300 times, 1,500 yards, 16 touchdowns. He's rushed over 1,400 yards 2 times in the last 3 years, and the only time he didn't was because he was hurt. CMC gets hurt a lot. They're going to milk him a lot, and I trust that they're going to milk him, but Dalvin Cook, I have more faith in. Let's move on to Derrick Henry versus Jonathan Taylor. Derrick Henry, rushed for over 2,000 yards. Jonathan Taylor rushed for barely over 1,000. I feel like there's too many people in Jonathan Taylor's backfield. Derrick Henry is just going to win this one because Derrick Henry rushed for over 2,000 yards. He has a good, just as good line as the Tennessee Titans. I like his quarterback, the quarterback that he's getting the ball from. Ryan Tannehill is more efficient. He's more efficient than Patrick Mahomes is in his last 31 starts. He has more touchdowns than Patrick Mahomes in the last 31 starts and a better passer rating. So Ryan Tannehill, I trust him more than Carson Wentz. Jonathan Taylor has to split with Nyheim Hines and Marlon Mack. Jonathan Taylor's out. Nick Chubb versus Austin Eckler. Yes, Austin Eckler is pretty much the clear-cut RB1, and he was hurt by injuries last year, but Nick Chubb is a top 4 or 5 running back, just in general. So you're going to give him the ball a lot. He's the type of guy who could give you 11 rushes, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Kareem Hunt still gets 10 touches on his end, 10 to 15. Nick Chubb, for sure, makes it. So now, as Dalvin Cook goes on to the championship round, Derrick Henry faces off against Nick Chubb to go to the championship round of the running back side of the bracket of our March Madness style bracket tournament to see who should be the best running back besides Alvin Kamara. Dalvin Cook already made it to the championship round, so Derrick Henry's going against Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb has to split it with Kareem Hunt, though. If I'm comparing things at the end of the day, Nick Chubb, Browns line, Titans line, same thing. Browns quarterback, Titans quarterback's better. Browns weapons, Titans weapons better. They have a better receiver, wide receiver 1 in my opinion. And they just added Josh Reynolds, who's just as good as Jarvis Landry. So, that's those two. I'm not saying fantasy-wise, but I'm not saying real-life-wise. I'm saying fantasy-wise, they're about the same. Nick Chubb has to split with Kareem Hunt. Derrick Henry is definitely going to go on to the championship round against Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook rushed for 16 touchdowns as he rushed 1,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, over 320 carries, being the second-ranked running back in fantasy football. Number 3 is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, the third-ranked fantasy running back, rushed for over 2,000 yards, as I said, and 17 touchdowns. This guy is a bulldozer, 378 rush attempts. This guy is out of this world, but he does not catch. If you're talking about PPR, he does not catch. So that's more points. Dalvin Cook had over 300 receiving yards, over 30 catches. You can't. And he had another 3 touchdowns in the air. Dalvin Cook gets the ball on the ground, through the air. Dalvin Cook is the number 1 championship running back from our running back side of March Madness. Let me know what you think at GSMC Fantasy Football. Do you think someone else should be better? I don't think so. I think Dalvin Cook is definitely, because he runs, he catches, the volume, no one behind him, and the offense built around him. You can't complain. When we come back, we are going to do the wide receiver side of the March Madness bracket, followed with the quarterback and the tight end. We'll be back with a word from our sponsor.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. The first part of the show we broke down the running back rankings. Kind of more like the running back bracketology. We did a March Madness version of what running back you should choose in next year's draft in kind of order. And we went over each matchup, and it should help you on which player you would prefer over the other one. I gave you numbers, I gave you reasons, I gave you the weapons they have around, and mainly just common knowledge. Like, who would you rather have as your quarterback? Ryan Tannehill with the Titans or Carson Wentz with the Colts? Exactly, Ryan Tannehill. Just little stuff like that. All this stuff matters on the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Remember, we're here to make you champions, nothing less. Second place is first place loser, so we do not accept anything less than a championship in your fantasy football league this year. I am going to help you with everything that I can, as much as I can, because I love fantasy football so much. We still have to talk about the quarterbacks side of the bracket and the tight end side of the bracket to close out the show. But first, we are going to do the wide receiver side of the bracket of our March Madness edition, because it's all over. March Madness is all coming to a close. It's now April Madness. This whole 2020, 2021 has been madness. So let's start off with the first matchup on the wide receiver bracket. Davante Adams, the number one receiver, 115 catches, 1,300 yards, 18 touchdowns. I know what you're saying. You're like, why'd you keep Alvin Kamara on the last one if Davante Adams is the clear-cut number one? I don't think he's a clear-cut number one. And I think someone else is the clear-cut number one, but I don't think everyone also thinks that. So we'll just see. We'll see going into next year. So it's up for debate. Davante Adams at number one is a good choice. Kenny Golladay did only play 3 games this whole year. He was pretending to be hurt, so he wouldn't play on the Detroit Lions. He had 20 catches, 330 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Yes, they do have a lot of weapons with Daniel Jones and the New York Giants. They have Darius Slayton on the outside, who's a top 25 receiver. They have Sterling Shepard, who, if is healthy, can be a top 30 receiver. Evan Ingram, a top 10 tight end. We'll talk about him later. And Kenny Golladay on the outside, with Saquon Barkley coming back. All that being said, they're still the Giants. They still got a lot of dysfunction over there. I don't like Joe Judge more than I like Matt LaFleur. I don't like Daniel Jones more than I like Aaron Rodgers. This is where quarterback play and offensive line play comes in more handy. Packers have one of the best offensive lines. Yeah, Giants, you're done. You just get people hurt. Let's break it down to the head-to-head matchup. Chris Godwin versus Mike Evans. The two Buccaneers, I have them matching up against each other because you want to know, who should I draft first? Should I get Mike Evans? But what about Chris Godwin? Chris Godwin's like the reception guy, isn't he? He had 65 catches last year. Well, he didn't have as many catches as Mike Evans, and he's a reception guy. Well, because he was hurt. Chris Godwin was the 31 ranked fantasy football receiver according to ESPN PPR standard format. 65 catches, 840 yards, and 7 touchdowns with 185 fantasy points. Mike Evans had 243 fantasy points, 70 catches, 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns. I mean, he had more touchdowns, more yards, more receptions, ranked higher on the receiver rankings. There's no problem with it. Mike Evans just gets the ball in the end zone. And that's what makes him so vital. Tom Brady looks to him. 10 out of his 13 touchdowns were red zone targets. Tom Brady loves Mike Evans in the red zone. That's just what it is. Mike Evans, Gronk. I want a big guy to catch the ball. You want touchdowns because touchdowns are worth the most in fantasy football. And if you could get someone who consistently has given you 1,000 yards in his first 6 seasons, like Mike Evans, take him over a Chris Godwin. Because I've made that mistake with Chris Godwin, and I don't want anyone to make that same mistake again. We're here to be champions on the Fantasy Football Podcast. The next matchup on the first round, on the left side of the bracket, Tyreek Hill, the number 3 ranked receiver last year in fantasy football, who had 87 catches, 1,200 yards, 1,276 to be exact, and 15 touchdowns. 15 touchdowns from a receiver. That's crazy. That's ranking 4th in the league behind Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, and Davante Adams in touchdowns. Davante Adams was obviously the first in touchdowns with 18. But that 15 touchdowns and 87 catches, you get it all. You got over 1,200 yards. Okay, so I got the yards. What else do you get with Tyreek Hill? Oh, I got the receptions. I got over 80 catches. Oh, that's good. That's not great because you want 100, but He's a deep threat guy. For him to get 87 catches and not like 60 or 70 is really good. 15 touchdowns. As a receiver, the record's 21, so for him to, or 23. So for him to do that, it's a lot of touchdowns. It's a lot. His quarterback play is awesome. He's going against DK Metcalf, who some would say Russell Wilson is better than Patrick Mahomes, but they'd be crazy and they'd be the loudest people on the block because I don't believe it. DK Metcalf with 7. He was the 7th ranked receiver last year. 83 catches. So he has 4 less catches. 1,300 yards. Just 30 more yards than Tyreek Hill, and he has 5 less touchdowns. That 5 less touchdowns is a lot at the end of the day. And DK Metcalf has had 3 drop touchdowns. 3. Yes, and I have seen them all because I had DK Metcalf on my fantasy team at one point, and it was just horrendous. Actually, I had him throughout the whole year. I traded for him. I traded Justin Jefferson. Bad mistake. Because I just saw the potential of DK Metcalf's last part of the season. You're like, wow, he's going to go against the Giants? No, the Eagles, the Giants, the Jets. Those are bottom 3 pass defenses. The Eagles have a better pass rush, but still. What did he give me? 27, 13, and 18. Decent, but not what Justin Jefferson was giving me. But be wary, because he did go against the Rams twice. He goes against the Rams twice every year against Jalen Ramsey. In those 2 matchups, he has a combined 8 catches for 87 yards. Stay away from him. Stay completely away from him. I would not touch DK Metcalf. I sat him down in the championship week. Championship week. Winner takes all. 1 game. Not 2 games and you win. No, 1 game. Every game counts. I sat DK Metcalf down for Deontay Johnson. I won by 5 fantasy points. DK Metcalf would have gave me 11. Deontay Johnson gave me 19. I would have lost if I started DK. You got to make the tough decisions. And the tough decision here, even though DK has it all and the potential, is Tyreek Hill is still the top 3 receiver in the NFL right now. Yards, touchdowns, whatever you want to give it, fantasy doesn't matter. Justin Jefferson versus Keenan Allen. Justin Jefferson had a breakout year. Offensive rookie of the year, 1,400 yards. He's crazy. I knew he was going to be a stud when I drafted him with my 112th pick? 112th pick, yeah. That's right, 112th pick. The 6th ranked fantasy football receiver, still had 7 touchdowns and 88 catches. But do we like Keenan Allen, though? Keenan Allen had 100 catches. Oh, you love that in PPR. 100-catch guy. Keenan Allen's had 100 yards in 2 out of the last 3 years. 992 yards last year, 8 touchdowns. So he had 500 less yards, but 1 more touchdown. But that's also because Keenan Allen was hurt. We like Keenan Allen, though. Keenan Allen has Jared Cook to help out Justin Herbert more now. He has Mike Williams on the other side to stretch out the field more. Austin Eckler in the back to catch it and get you kind of like, oh, I don't know if he's going to dump it in the backfield. No. I was trying to hype him up too much. It's obviously Justin Jefferson. That offense goes, okay, we're giving it to Dalvin Cook every play. Dalvin Cook can't get the ball. He's tired. Time to give it long to Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen is inconsistent in fantasy football. That's why he's not on my bracket of wide receivers. So Justin Jefferson is going to get majority of that play. Kirk Cousins was still an 11th ranked fantasy football quarterback, threw for over 4,200 yards, 35 touchdowns. If you're throwing 35 touchdowns in the league, you're good. You're throwing stuff. He's still ranked in the top 10 in touchdowns out of quarterbacks. A lot of turnovers, but that's besides the point. That's, if anything, better because then you need the ball to hurry up and score. You're playing against the Packers, and then now you're playing against the Bears, who have, I guess, Andy Dalton. But you're playing against those 2 offenses, specifically the Packers. They're going to be high-scoring games. Justin Jefferson is going to get a lot of good plays. Justin Jefferson over Keenan Allen, in my opinion. Allen Robinson going up against Michael Thomas, the fraud last year, the guy who I drafted. First overall, no one told me. I know. They're telling me, everyone's saying, don't drag Michael Thomas's name when you drafted him first overall. I know. But I still traded. Yes, I traded Nick Chubb, but that's when Nick Chubb was hurt, and I needed Allen Robinson because I went in the playoffs as a 4th seed. So, yeah, I needed it. I needed every single win I could. So I got Allen Robinson, 9th ranked receiver, gave me over 100 catches, 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns with Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky. No one knew who the quarterback was at the time. They also had Ryan Nail at running back at one point. Everyone was hurt on that offense, and he was still the 9th-ranked fantasy receiver. You can't guard him. If he was on a team like the Colts, like the Chiefs, like the Packers, if he was on a real team, he would be balling. But he's balling just as enough as Allen Robinson can because you can't guard him, and it doesn't matter how good a team is. If you can't guard him, you can't guard him. It's just straight up what it is. And Matt Nagy finds ways to get him open. Michael Thomas is the number 1 receiver, and they did get rid of Alvin Kamara, but I don't know the quarterback situation. I need Jameis Winston to be there for me to want Michael Thomas because Taysom Hill can't throw, and he was bringing down Michael Thomas's stock. Michael Thomas's best game, at least fantasy-wise with Taysom Hill, was not even good. It was only like 17 points. That's all it was. 19. Sorry, 19 points. Ooh, 19 points. He did that twice. And then the other 3 times he gave you 9, 4, and 10. So that's not enough. That's not enough on the Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here for champions. Stephon Diggs, my boy. I don't know why I traded him. Actually, I do know why. I traded him for Derrick Henry. So ended up working out in the end because I'm a champion. But Stephon Diggs, one of the top 2 fantasy receivers last year because he had 127 catches, most receptions in the league, 1,535 yards, most reception yards in the league, and 8 touchdowns. Not 10 less touchdowns than Devontae, and that's why separates him a little bit, but it's because they have a lot of weapons. He's going against CeeDee Lamb, the 22 ranked fantasy football receiver, had 74 catches, 935 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That's not enough to take out Stephon Diggs because Stephon Diggs is going to have a great year next year, fantasy football-wise. Josh Allen loves to feed him the ball. You can't double him. You can't. Because Josh Allen, you have to have a quarterback spy on him because he rushed over 500 yards last year. So you always got to make sure he's in the pocket. Not only is he going to scramble and get plays with his feet, but he has Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, and Gabriel Davis. So you can't double him because then they're all going to take the top off or beat you under. So Stephon Diggs, even with all those people on his team, I still think is going to have 120 receptions. He's going to have a great year next year. Literally, no doubt in my mind. He has at least 1,400 yards next year and 8 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs beats CeeDee Lamb in that one. CeeDee Lamb does have Dak Prescott back, but I think CeeDee Lamb's not going to be... He was in an unfair matchup. I think CeeDee Lamb's a better receiver than Chris Godwin, Kenny Golladay, Michael Thomas. Not DK, but better than Keenan Allen too. I'd rather have CeeDee Lamb just because he's so young and that offense is very fantasy friendly. We're going to go A.J. Brown against Calvin Ridley. A.J. Brown, who I have faith is going to be a top 5 fantasy receiver because he has a great running back in the backfield to make you be like, oh, I need to stack the box. Then, not only that, he has great quarterback play. As I said, more efficient, more touchdowns thrown in the last 31 games, not including playoff games. Ryan Tannehill has thrown more than Patrick Mahomes. A.J. Brown, 70 catches, 1,075 yards, 12th ranked fantasy receiver, 11 touchdowns. He knows how to find the end zone. He's a better version of DK Metcalf to me. If anything, they're the same thing. That's why they both came out of Ole Miss. But Calvin Ridley is just interesting because he's put up some phenomenal numbers last year. Phenomenal. He was the 5th ranked receiver, had 90 catches, 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. I just don't see anything with the Falcons offense that's getting me wowed. I need to see them draft a quarterback. Maybe get Kyle Pitts in the draft. Maybe get someone else. But Calvin Ridley, I like A.J. Brown this year more than Calvin Ridley. And granted, Calvin Ridley did give you only one single-digit fantasy game. 7 points against the Carolina Panthers. That's it. Everything else was above 11 fantasy points. One was 11. Everything else after that was above 14. So you can't even be mad at Calvin Ridley. And I'm giving you his fantasy points from a PPR perspective. Tyler Lockett, who just signed his fat $4,170,000 deal, he and Chase Claypool are going against each other in this first round. Chase Claypool, I'm big on in particular because I think that was his rookie year last year. He's going to get acclimated. 22 ranked receiver last year, 62 catches, 873 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He just knows how to take the top off. He's going to take the Juju role where he gets 80 catches, 1,000 yards, 9, 10 touchdowns. I like him better than Lockett because I think Lockett gets hurt every once in a while. He doesn't play a full season. He hasn't played a full season in the last 5 seasons. 8th-ranked receiver last year. He did have 100 catches for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. But I see Chase Claypool having a better fantasy year going into next year because, like I said, you don't want quarterback and head coach arguing. It's not a recipe for success. You're going to see Russell Wilson maybe decline a bit. Who knows? I take out both the Seattle receivers. Davante Adams now goes against Mike Evans in the second round. Mike Evans over 1,000 yards, has 13 touchdowns. But come on. Davante Adams, Aaron Rodgers loves him more than anything else. He's the clear-cut number one. Mike Evans has to compete with Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, Scotty Miller, Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, Cameron Bray. Davante Adams only competes against himself and Aaron Jones. And they still don't like Aaron Jones fully. I'm getting Davante Adams, but Mike Evans, I like more than Keenan Allen. I like more than Lockett. I don't like more than Ridley, though. I like Ridley more than Mike Evans because Ridley, like I said, only gave you one game where he had single-digit fantasy points. That consistency is crazy. He's the number one receiver because Julio's always hurt. And they have a lot of good slot and shifty guys all the time, like Zacchaeus Olamide. And they have a bunch of them, but they always have other ones. They're going to add another one in the draft right now, and I just have faith Ridley would be better. Mike Evans, I don't like more than A.J. Brown. I like him more than CeeDee Lamb. I like him also more than Mike Thomas, but not more than Allen Robinson. Let's go to Tyreek Hill against Justin Jefferson. An unfair matchup for Justin Jefferson, but Justin Jefferson I like more than everyone else I've eliminated. Justin Jefferson would have not got eliminated by A.J. Brown. He wouldn't have gotten eliminated by Claypool. The only people I have above Justin Jefferson are Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Davante Adams. And that's it. It's the only people. Everyone else, no. Because they feed it to Justin Jefferson so much. I'm giving it to Hill. But Justin Jefferson had the production over 80 catches this year. First year in the offense, 1,400 yards, over 10 touchdowns. This guy is a stud in an offense that really just sees kind of like, oh, let me look at either both receivers or my running back. That's it. We don't give it to Kyle Rudolph. Adam Thielen was the 10th ranked receiver last year, so you have to respect him. You can't double me. So Justin Jefferson, I like more than all these options. Allen Robinson takes on Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs, I just think is going to be the number one receiver. Straight out, I think that he's going to have over 120 catches, over 10 touchdowns, over 1,400 yards. That offense is healthy. It's growing. The Bills are getting better. The Bears, I can't say the same. Andy Dalton's throwing them the ball. Who knows who's going to be his quarterback by week 6. Matt Nagy's not that great of a play caller, but enough to get Allen Robinson open. It seems like they're not running that organization right on the Bears, and that's something you got to think about along with their fantasy football play. A.J. Brown against Chase Claypool. A.J. Brown, that's easy because he has a better quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, compared to Ben Roethlisberger. He has a better offensive line. I also think that their defense is not as good, so I think that they'll have to score more points. They're going to have to go against the Colts, and they got to go against the Texans. So A.J. Brown plays the Texans twice a year, along with the Jaguars. He should rip them up. A.J. Brown. Chase Claypool goes against the Ravens twice a year, who have good corners. They go against the Browns, who now added Josh Johnson, and Troy Hill from the Rams. I don't like it. So now it leads Tyreek Hill versus Davante Adams, the number 1 and number 3 ranked receivers in fantasy last year. Quarterbacks are both the same, both elite, top 4 in the NFL. But Tyreek Hill has to split more because Travis Kelce's there. Patrick Mahomes also gives touchdowns to guys like Demarcus Robinson. Sammy Watkins isn't there, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There's always another running back too. Byron Pringle. He milks it, and you could double Tyreek Hill. It was evident in the Super Bowl. You could do that. Davante Adams, you can't really double. You can't, because Aaron Rodgers will make you pay with other people, and you're like, no, I'd rather just try to guard Davante Adams one-on-one. We all don't have Jalen Ramsey's out there, so Davante Adams takes Tyreek Hill as the number 1 fantasy football receiver on the left-hand side, because I think I would take Hill over everyone else besides Davante Adams and Stephon Diggs. Even A.J. Brown, I would take him over. Stephon Diggs versus A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown does have great quarterback play, a great running back in the backfield, which Stephon Diggs doesn't have. But Stephon Diggs has more weapons spread out. So you could double A.J. Brown and be like, beat me with Derrick Henry or Josh Reynolds. You don't want to lose by Derrick Henry, but you could do that. You could say, oh, I'll have one safety over the top and then we'll get Josh Reynolds on the other side one-on-one. You can't do that with Stephon Diggs. There's Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis, Emmanuel Sanders. All these guys have potential to at least catch 750 to 1,000 yards. Stephon Diggs will be the beneficiary of all that. He will be the leading one out of them. 1,000. I told you what I said. He's going to beat A.J. Brown on our side. A.J. Brown I like more than everyone besides Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams. That's it. Oh, and Justin Jefferson. That's it. He's a 5th-ranked receiver to me. Devontae Adams goes off against Stephon Diggs, the number 1 and number 2 ranked receivers. Stephon Diggs. I like him because Devontae Adams gets hurt every other year. And that's just what it's shown. And Devontae Adams gets hurt on toe injuries. He's the only guy on that team. Stephon Diggs, you spread it out. The Bills are going to take a leap. We have seen the best of the Packers as we've seen. We haven't seen the best of the Bills we could see. Josh Allen's getting better. His quarterback percentage, his QBR, and his yards thrown per game are all getting better as each year has progressed, especially with Sean McDermott at coach. Stephon Diggs is my number 1 bracketology March Madness champion. That was the wide receiver side of the brackets. We still got to do quarterbacks and tight ends at the end. Or we'll do quarterbacks at the end because that should be the bonus. That's the bonus show because I don't believe in having quarterbacks. You should draft them. You could get them like Justin Herbert or Ryan Tannehill at the end. So the bonus will be the quarterbacks at the end. We will go over the quarterback bracket side. But we will come back after a word from our sponsor.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we are back at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We just talked about the running back bracket and the wide receiver bracket of fantasy football. Since March Madness is concluding, we decided to make a bracket for each position to help you out, see kind of like head-to-head matchups on who you should draft, reasoning being fantasy football backed up with fantasy football numbers and like certain situations and circumstances. Like, why would we draft Dave Montgomery over Jonathan Taylor if they have Andy Dalton? I'd rather trust Carson Wentz. Even Carson Wentz is someone I would trust more than Andy Dalton at quarterback. But yeah, that was the running back side. But we're going to talk about tight ends now. And after this, in the bonus part, we'll talk about quarterbacks because it should be a bonus to get quarterbacks. You could get a quarterback at the end of the draft and still win a championship or off the waiver wire. It's not always just, I have to get a top quarterback unless I guess it's Patrick Mahomes. But I have made that same mistake, and it always doesn't work well. Let's talk about some tight ends. We are going to do the tight end side of the bracket. We're going to break down all these tight ends, and we're going to talk about their situations, their fantasy numbers, and if we would draft them as the first pick out of all tight ends. To start it off, we're going to start off with Travis Kelce, the obvious and clear-cut number 1 fantasy tight end. Travis Kelce had a stellar year with the Kansas City Chiefs. 105 catches, 1,400 yards, 11 touchdowns. Was at one point the reception leader until Stephon Diggs started to pull away, but still had 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns. Those numbers are unheard of. He has had over 1,000 receiving yards in every single season Patrick Mahomes has been quarterback. Those 11 touchdowns show that he's a viable red zone option. He's going against poor Jared Cook. Jared Cook just got added to the Chargers. He had over 500 receiving yards last year and 7 touchdowns. So that means he's a good red zone threat as well. But if we're doing this realistically and Kelsey being Gonzaga and Cook is just Colgate, there's some weak college that are going against a number 1 seed, and it's hard. It's hard. Cook is a great option. I could see him. I would draft him over, who else on this list? Maybe Everett. Maybe Gerald Everett. But that's it. Other than that, Jared Cook is someone you would get in the later rounds off a fly, and you just hope that Justin Herbert has a connection with him. But Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes have that connection. That connection is something that they're not going to lose anytime soon. Travis Kelce being the number 1 red zone threat. Tyreek Hill's not really a red zone threat. He's not as big. Travis Kelce's 6'7". You can't teach that. So that helping with his argument of him getting all the touchdowns, the catches, and all the love from Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce stomps out Jared Cook. We're going to go on to the next side. Mark Andrews versus Tyler Higbee. Mark Andrews was the number 6 fantasy tight end last year and the number 1 receiver for not the number 1 receiver, the number 2 receiver for the Baltimore Ravens, right behind Marquise Brown. Only like 50 yards though. Mark Andrews had 58 catches, 701 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He gets hurt on and off, but he is Lamar Jackson's favorite person to throw to because he's the only guy who gets open. Lamar Jackson runs the way the Ravens offense is built is that they're going to run it a lot and then get you off these, schemes where they're tight ends that are already on the line, 2-3 tight end set. They kind of flare and do little curl routes. So it just helps tight ends a lot more because not only are they, faking you out because you think it's going to be a run, but on the route, they're running at linebackers, safeties, cornerbacks, and they're able to use their body because tight ends are bigger and heavier set and use their body to kind of box them out. That's why you see a lot of basketball players turn into tight ends because they have the box out ability. So that helps out Mark Andrews. He's able to box out people in the end zone, and Lamar Jackson's able to throw it to him. Mark Andrews is also a great route runner. But Tyler Higbee has a new quarterback this year. I know he was the 17th ranked tight end last year and failed a lot of people's expectations because everyone if you drafted Tyler Higbee, you drafted him within the first 10 rounds because the season before he was a top 10 tight end, but last year fell off with only 5 touchdowns. But now Gerald Everett is gone, so it's Tyler Higbee's show. He's the only one there on the Los Angeles Rams. It's only him, Robert Woods, if you consider, I guess, Van Jefferson, but him, Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp. And the Cam Akers to run with that running game being on par. Tyler Higbee's going to see a lot of sets because you need to bring more linemen in, more tight ends in. Tyler Higbee's going to be in more. Gerald Everett isn't there. He isn't the only option to throw to. So I think that Tyler Higbee's going to have a breakout year this year. I feel like he's going to have like 60 catches, 700, 800 yards, 9 touchdowns because that offense wants to run first. They're like a Seahawks offense, whereas it makes sense, NFC West. They want to run first, but they throw the ball a lot because they're put in a lot of situations where they have to throw, and they kind of want to use the quarterback because Sean McVay is a quarterback guy. He wants to use Jared Goff. Now he can't. Matt Stafford has the capability to throw 30 to 40 times a game. He's used to it being on the Lions. I like Tyler Higbee more than Mark Andrews, even though Mark Andrews is the leading receiver pretty much on the Baltimore Ravens. He gets hurt too much, and I feel like Lamar Jackson's a worse thrower than Matt Stafford. We saw what Matt Stafford did with TJ Hawkinson last year. I'm with Tyler Higbee on this one. So let's go with the next matchup. Robert Tonyan versus Zach Ertz. Robert Tonyan, the surprise of the year, ended up finishing as a top tight end. He was the number 4 tight end, 52 catches, 586 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Numbers don't sound too crazy, but he didn't start picking up towards the end of the year. He only towards his last 5 weeks, he only scored single-digit fantasy points one time. Robert Tonyan was on a good, if there was stock in Robert Tonyan, it's on the up and up right now because Aaron Rodgers barely figured out about Robert Tonyan because he's a rookie, obviously last year. So now This year he'll get more into the playbook. Aaron Rodgers will probably throw to him more in the end zone, especially if they're triple teaming Devontae Adams, which they should do. If you're getting 18 touchdowns and over 100 catches for over 1,500 yards, Devontae Adams had a crazy year. They're probably going to double him. Aaron Jones, there's no Jamal Williams anymore, so now you're going to trust Robert Tonyan and A.J. Dillon more. Robert Tonyan, I like him more than Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz was Carson Wentz's boy. He only had 36 catches, 335 yards, and a touchdown. The thing going against Zach Ertz is time, his age. He's already over 30 years old. He's already over 35 years old, actually. He's been playing the league a long time. He's kind of washed, and he's not the only tight end on that Colts offense now. He's with what's his face? It's Molly Cox, Trey Burton. There's too many other fantasy football guys there. So Robert Tonyan's the only tight end on that team. He's the clear-cut one. So I feel like Robert Tonyan's going to be a high fantasy tight end this year. Let's go on to the next matchup. Gerald Everett versus George Kittle. George Kittle, the man who gets hurt religiously once a year and always, disappoints people at the end of the fantasy year, is going against Gerald Everett, who is a surprise to much because he is now on the Seattle Seahawks, so now he has a better quarterback. He only had 41 catches for 417 yards and a touchdown last year, ranking 24th out of tight ends on a PPR format. But Gerald Everett is now going to be the clear-cut tight end one. They don't have Greg Olsen or anyone else on the Seattle Seahawks anymore. He's not splitting time with Tyler Higbee anymore. I expect him to do a lot, but George Kittle is one of the best blocking tight ends, the best route running tight ends, and the toughest tight end in the league. Even though he gets hurt and breaks his ankle, he'll still come back. So George Kittle, you can't always pray that he's going to get hurt or think he's going to get hurt. And I feel like I'd live with George Kittle more than I would live with Gerald Everett, because Gerald Everett's going to give me games where he gives me 7 or 6 or 5. George Kittle wouldn't do that. And that's because Kyle Shanahan's offense has a certain system and it's built around also giving the ball to George Kittle. George Kittle beats Gerald Everett in that one. Let's go to the other side. Darren Waller, the number 2 fantasy tight end, going against Hunter Henry, which is a surprise, who went to the New England Patriots just the other day. He was the 11th ranked tight end, 60 catches, 613 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's going to have to split stuff with Jonnu Smith, though, but it almost seems like an Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski type of thing, where they're going to split time with the tight ends. And not only that, it's also like a Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt type of thing, where they're completely fine with giving it to both running backs. They're completely fine with giving it to both tight ends. Hunter Henry should have about 50 catches, 700 yards, and 4 touchdowns, but he's not Darren Waller. Darren Waller gets the ball all the time. Second ranked receiver, fantasy tight end, 107 catches, 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns. Darren Waller doesn't get too many touchdowns. This was actually a more up and up touchdown year because last year he only got 3. But with 107 catches at the tight end position, that's top. That's top right there. That's more than what Travis Kelce had. Travis Kelce only had 105 receptions. So that just shows you how good Darren Waller was. I traded him for Myles Gaskin, if you could believe the nonsense. I put him over Hunter Henry just because he has to split it with Jonnu Smith, though. And I trust Derek Carr more than I trust Cam Newton as a thrower. Jonnu Smith, speaking about him, he is going against Evan Ingram, who I just don't get. I just don't get why you would get Evan Ingram, for the simple fact that Evan Ingram consistently always knows how to disappoint you. Evan Ingram you draft him as a top 5 tight end, and he finishes as a 16th ranked tight end. Could have got Gerald Everett for that matter, or Tyler Higbee, who finished 17th. Evan Ingram only finished with 63 catches, 654 yards, and a touchdown. He had 2 concussions throughout the year, which is never good for the long term. Evan Ingram now has to split but he has to split love with everyone else now. He has to split with Kenny Galladay, Saquon's back, Darius Slayton. I don't like his upside more than I like Jonnu's upside, because I know what the Patriots want to do with their tight ends. I know it because you've seen it with Gronk. You've seen it with Aaron Hernandez. You've seen it with Ben Graham. You've seen it with a lot of tight ends that they just had in the past. But with Jonnu Smith, you have the 14th ranked tight end in fantasy football, 41 catches, 448 yards, but 8 touchdowns. On 48 catches, 8 touchdowns. About like 1/6 of that, or 1/5 of that, 1/5 of his catches are touchdowns. So this guy knows how to find the end zone. He's good in the red zone. That's exactly what the Patriots need because they only threw for 8 passing touchdowns last year. You best believe they're going to try to milk Jonnu Smith for everything they got, paying him over $50 million. So Jonnu Smith over Evan Ingram in my book any day of the week. Let's go on to Noah Fant. Noah Fant is going against Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas, the number 3 ranked tight end last year, who I believe is just amazing at tight end, going against the number 9 tight end in Noah Fant, 62 catches, 673 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Drew Lock is still their quarterback. Drew Lock is very consistent. He's a Bronco. He only had 3 touchdowns last year, even though playing 15 out of 16 games. I don't know, man. I think Noah Fant is great for Drew Lock, and that's why he was the 9th ranked tight end, but he's a top 10 tight end until they get a better quarterback play or anyone else back there. Because you're telling me Logan Thomas in the Ron Rivera system where they just milk tight ends and they milk running backs constantly like he did when he was on the Panthers? You tell me that's going to fail? He was a 3rd ranked tight end with 72 catches, 670 yards, 6 touchdowns. Yes, he's over 30 years old, but still, he's going to keep it going. He knows how to block. He's out on the field he's on the offensive side 96% of the snaps. So he's there most of the time. You want Logan Thomas more than you want Noah Fant. There's no doubt in my mind about that one. So Noah Fant, sorry, but Drew Lock's your quarterback, and I don't trust it. I trust Heineke more because at least Heineke has the moxie to keep doing it. And then the next and last matchup in the first round, Gronk versus Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet really didn't have much of a chance because he only caught for over 300 yards this year on the Bears, but he was a rookie out of Notre Dame. I just want to say it so you can remember. But Gronk, the 8th ranked tight end, 45 catches, 623 yards, 7 touchdowns. The Panthers just got Sam Darnold, so now it's just making it easier for Tom Brady. Tom Brady's looking more excited for this year. I'm sure he really wants to win again to show people like, oh, I'm not just the GOAT. I'm the GOAT. Rob Gronkowski's going to stay there as long as Tom's there. Tom's going to milk him in there as long as he's there. The Bucs are going to have fun and just love everyone as long as they're both there. So Rob Gronkowski, even though he has more people spread out, I trust Tom Brady more than I trust Dalton. And that's how that breaks down. Now we go Kelsey. Kelsey versus Tyler Higbee. Kelsey all the way. It's not even close just because Tyler Higbee doesn't get all the volume as much as Kelsey. He had 50 less catches, half as many yards, half as many touchdowns. I don't see all of that doubling just because of Matt Stafford. So I have Tyler. That was an easy one. Kelsey. Kittle versus Tonyan, which is funny because they call Tonyan Baby Kittle. I actually like Tonyan better because he has good upside and he's young, 2nd year in the league. Aaron Rodgers is definitely going to put him in that offense more. He saw what he could do with them. He started picking up towards the second half of the season more. That's when he got all of his production. The first half of the season, they didn't even know who he was until they realized his potential, until he got that 3-touchdown game against the Vikings. He plays the Vikings again this year. Goes against terrible tight end defenses. The Vikings and the Lions. Terrible. The Bears are better because they have good linebacker play, but still, both those teams he plays 4 times a year. I like Tonyan more than Kittle. Kittle's great, and he has all the potential in the world, but he's just been getting hurt too much, man. Too much for me. Just way too much for me. And then if we go to the right side, it's Darren Waller versus Jonnu Smith. Darren Waller is the number 2 tight end. He had more catches than Kelsey. If you're telling me a tight end has more catches than Kelsey, you're the best receiver on that team, and you have Derek Carr as opposed to Cam Newton, I got Darren Waller. So Jonnu Smith, sorry. You're great. I like you better than Everett. I like you better, maybe even than Kittle, too. I like you better than Andrews, Higbee, Cook, Font, Cole Kmet. I like you better than all these guys. Even Gronk. I like you better than all of them, but you had to go against Waller, the number 2 tight end. I don't think so. Logan Thomas versus Gronk. That one's tough. That one's tough because you could see a lot of similarities in what they do. They're both older tight ends. They're out on the field a majority of the time, but Logan Thomas does not compete with another tight end like Rob Gronkowski does with Cameron Bray, and O.J. Howard's going to come back. And I also don't think Logan Thomas has to worry about that many weapons because, yes, they do have Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin, but that's it. Everyone else is just as good as Logan Thomas, if not as good at the receiving end. Antonio Gibson's going to get some love, which helps because, I mean, the Bucs are going to be a run the ball defense, ground and pound. Bruce Arians already said you run the ball to open up the pass. That's what he's going to do. So I feel like Logan Thomas will get more love than Gronkowski. Gronkowski's not mad at Tom Brady if he doesn't throw him the ball anyway. Logan Thomas would. Now we got Kelsey versus Tanyan. Tanyan's going to have a great year. I like him as the 4th best tight end in fantasy football this upcoming year because of potential, what he did toward the end of the year, how many touchdowns he scores, and his quarterback. But Kelsey has all that and more. So, Kelsey, 102 catches, over 1,000 yards receiving, over 14 yards receiving. Stop it. 11 touchdowns, more touchdowns. Like, there's just no way. Kelsey's done this year in and year out with Patrick Mahomes. That's too much consistency. Robert Tonyan, this is just a sample size. And it's just what I believe in. Darren Waller versus Logan Thomas. I like Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas actually catches touchdowns more. Darren Waller, yes, was the second race tight end, but Logan Thomas was the third. It wasn't that much of a difference because Logan Thomas started picking up towards the end of the year. He had 69 fantasy points. Darren Waller had 271. So he started picking up at the end of the year. Darren Waller did have 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns, but I think that's going to get taken away a bit. And I like Logan Thomas just better. I like him at value-wise better. How about that? Darren Waller will advance just because he's the better tight end, but Logan Thomas's value is better. You could get Darren Waller numbers from Logan Thomas in like the 4th, 5th round. So no reason to get Darren Waller early if you're going to get Logan Thomas. But Logan Thomas is eliminated. Of course, 1 versus 2. Kelsey versus Waller. Both had over 100 catches. Both had over 14. One actually had over 1,400 yards. One had over 1,100 yards. But Kelsey had more touchdowns, more yards, better quarterback, not a running pure offense. Darren Waller, sorry. Your offense has Kenyon Drake now. You're trying to run the ball more. That's why you got Willie Snead. You wanted a run-blocking wide receiver who just came from the Baltimore Ravens. Willie Snead. Travis Kelce's the number 1 tight end on the tight end side of the brackets. Remember, if you don't think this bracket is right, I'm pretty much just choosing the number 1. No, I'm kidding. I didn't. I chose Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook was a 2. And I also chose the number 2 receiver, Stephon Diggs. I think Stephon Diggs was going to have a better year. But when we come back, we're going to do our bonus part. We're going to talk about the quarterback bracket. Because remember, you don't need quarterbacks. But we'll go over the quarterbacks to see which ones are more likely to have a better year when we come back after this commercial break.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
The GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast is back, where we can make anybody into a champion. We give all the best advice. And on our bonus segment today, we are going to talk about, do a bracket on the quarterbacks. The reason why I put it for the bonus part is because, like I said, you don't need quarterbacks to win a fantasy championship. It's been done before. It's usually done most of the time. You usually find someone. There's always a rookie. This is one of the best quarterback draft classes in a long time. And Trevor Lawrence is one of the best draft prospects at the QB position since Andrew Luck, and one of the better ones also since John Elway. So we're seeing a lot of great talent. Everyone's high on Zach Wilson right now. Justin Fields was still a Heisman candidate, and you still cannot forget about him. There's also Trey Lance, who's doing great on all of his pro days. But we'll talk about all that and more later in the month because it is draft season. And draft season is around the corner. The draft is at the end of the month. But first, we are going to talk about the quarterback bracket side of this little March Madness tournament that we're kind of doing. And the first matchup we're going to start off with is, it has to be a heavyweight versus someone who's a little lighter, just to give that heavyweight, a good seeding. That's what we do. If you're a high seed, the first round should be kind of a cakewalk, which is, in this instance, Patrick Mahomes, the fourth-ranked quarterback in fantasy football, is going against Sam Darnold, ex-quarterback of the Jets, now quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. Sam Darnold is benefiting more because instead of having Breshad Perriman, Denzel Mims, and Jameson Crowder, like he did the past year, and Le'Veon Bell, he now is benefiting from a way better running back in Christian McCaffrey, who could also catch out of the backfield, which could help him a lot in high-pressure situations where he needs a security blanket or someone to dump to when the pressure is getting high. And I don't know how Sam Darnold's going to handle it because all I've seen him on the Jets, and the Jets are one of the worst-ran organizations in the NFL, so that's not a fair point to grade him on, the grading scale of how good he could be. So we'll see how he'll be on the Panthers. He has DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, 2,000-yard receivers. Yes, they don't have Curtis Samuel, but like I said, they still have Christian McCaffrey. That defense is young and getting better. That's not helping him, but it just helps in a sense. But he still has to go against Tom Brady in the NFC South. He has to go against the Saints in the NFC South, which could help from a fantasy perspective just because those offenses are going to score on that Panthers defense. Now, who's going to have to keep up with them and score with them? It's going to be Patrick Mahomes. It's going to be Sam Darnold. He's going to almost have to take on what Justin Herbert has to do against Patrick Mahomes. The other guy Sam Darnold's going against, the fourth-ranked quarterback, threw for 4,700 yards, 38 touchdowns, only 8 turnovers on the year, so you love his decision-making. He just lost the Super Bowl, so he's going to definitely be angry going into next year. I don't see Patrick Mahomes, why you wouldn't draft Sam Darnold in any, reality or, whatever you want to believe in. There's no way you would draft Sam Darnold ahead of Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes is just going to kind of walk through him on this one. But it is noted that Sam Darnold has better weapons. I like the culture that is in Carolina. I was about to call him North Carolina. The Carolina Panthers better. And Patrick Mahomes, he goes on to the next round. We're going to go over Tua versus Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, the third-ranked fantasy quarterback, had 3,900 yards, passing 26 touchdowns. He did have 16 turnovers, though. 12 interceptions and 4 forced fumbles. That's, expected from someone who was in his second year. Now going on to his third year, Kyler Murray added the likes of A.J. Green. He has the oldest wide receiving core in the league by far, with DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, and A.J. Green, as I said. He also has Christian Kirk. He has Chase Edmonds in the backfield. We'll see if they draft another running back because they just let Kenyon Drake walk to the Oakland Raiders. And I like his weapons. I honestly like how that offense is run. If you see how college quarterbacks like to run college coaches like to run offenses in the NFL. They like to run a wacky offense that's real high motor. Oh, quick pace, no huddle. Let's go to the line. Let's run as many plays as we can. You run this way, you run this way. So it gets creative and good in some cases. In some cases, it's bad just because you're kind of trying to do too much. And also, it's not college, so you can't do the same things that you do in the NFL because these athletes are faster, stronger. They're less than 1% of the world. So they're going to be the premier cream of the crop athletes, not like college football or anything in college. But that could also help too in another way when it comes to fantasy because say Kyler Murray throws an interception, they take it to the house. Now Kyler Murray has to score another touchdown. Now they have to score more points on the board. Now they have to throw it and rely on Kyler Murray. He is the number one option in that offense because he was the leading rusher on that, or one of the leading rushers on that team. Had the most rush yards per attempt in the NFL, over 8 yards per rush. Kyler Murray was technically the best running back in the league. So him just being a dual threat puts him over Tua. Tua's finally going to get his first whole year at starting. Last year he was fighting against Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick is there no mas. He is now on the Washington football team. Tua was the 32nd ranked fantasy quarterback. The Miami Dolphins quarterback threw for 1,800 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a fumble. You don't like that he has 6 turnovers to his 11 touchdowns. That's not a good ratio. But Tua is a game manager. He doesn't want to make that many big mistakes. It's just, I feel like him coming off the hip injury meant a lot. He didn't get to play his whole, pretty much, last year of senior football at Alabama. He had to get acclimated back into that Miami offense. They didn't have Devontae Parker. He was hurt. Preston Williams got hurt. Myles Gaskin got COVID and got hurt throughout the year. They were relying on Philip Layard, Jakeem Grant. Poor Tua. Now they added Will Fuller, but I don't think that's enough to put him over Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray has a better receiver in DeAndre Hopkins, and he has the other 3 old geezers, like I said, Larry Fitzgerald and A.J. Green. Dak Prescott versus Russell Wilson. This is an interesting matchup because Dak Prescott was not ranked one of the highest quarterbacks, obviously, in fantasy because he got hurt after Week 5. Or during Week 5 against the Giants. He was having a stellar year before that. He was number 1 in passing yards, number 1 in passing touchdowns, and that was all due to that horrendous 32nd ranked Dallas Cowboys defense at the time. It didn't finish 32nd. They finished 27th in the past, but still, 32nd at the time. So that means they were giving up crazy points. They're giving it up to the Rams, the Falcons, the Seahawks, the Browns. The Browns, they actually got smacked. They let 40 points get scored on by them. That's when we really saw Odell Beckham open up the playbook. Dak Prescott is a great quarterback, and he has CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper, which is probably the best wide receiving core in the NFL. Russell Wilson, great. Great fantasy year. You can't even complain because Russell Wilson was still the 6th ranked fantasy quarterback in the league. 4,200 yards, threw 40 touchdowns, 17 turnovers, 13 picks. Great. He has DK Metcalf. They just signed Tyler Lockett to a new deal. The problem is Russell Wilson's not happy. And usually when you have those situations where a quarterback's not happy with the coach, they don't always go well. And I'm not saying Russell Wilson's terrible to where he's going to fall off, but is he going to have a better season than Dak? They added Gerald Everett. Yes, that helps a lot, but they're a run-first offense. That's kind of what they want to do. The Cowboys have Mike McCarthy at coach, and you know from his Green Bay Packers days, this guy will throw touchdowns on the 1-2 yard line. And if they notice Zeke gets, clobbered up in the backfield at all, they're not hesitant to have Dak Prescott do a fake and run in the end zone. Dak Prescott will have more rushing touchdowns and passing touchdowns than Russell Wilson next year if he could have a full healthy season. I like Dak Prescott because there's no controversy. He's ready. He's paid. He's got all the weapons. Like I said, best receiving core. I'd rather have those 3 guys than DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, if I have to be completely honest with you. 3-headed monster. They still have Dalton Schultz, who's just as good as Gerald Everett, to be honest, if not maybe a little bit better at blocking. But they all have they have almost the same weapons, but I think Dak Prescott and that offense is superior due to the coaching, the wide receiving core, and kind of how those offenses are built. Joe Burrow versus Matt Stafford. Joe Burrow is another guy who did not benefit too much from this year because he got hurt. He threw 2,600 yards, 13 touchdowns, 5 picks. He was having a great year. He has decent weapons, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. I like T. Higgins as a top 10 fantasy receiver next year in PPR just because he's always consistent with catching. He's going to give you 6 catches, 60 yards, and maybe a touchdown. Joe Burrow's probably going to add one more weapon. That's what he asked for. So either in this draft, they're going to add Jamar Chase or the tight end out of Florida, Kyle Pitts, who's another phenom who has one of the longest wingspans since DK Metcalf. So that should just show you how much of a physical beast he is. Joe Burrow is going to have all that. And we'll see if Joe Mixon comes back. I'm just never too high on Joe Mixon for the simple fact that he always finds a way to get hurt. He's been hurt 2 out of his last 3 years. The last year he got hurt after week 5, didn't return the rest of the year. So you have Giovanni Bernard back there. Stinks because you don't have a great line and also not having a great running back. That's not a recipe for good. That doesn't make sense, but I know. Matt Stafford, on the other hand, now is on the Rams offense, which I think he's benefiting a lot more because Matt Stafford was good. He threw for 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, and only 10 picks with the Lions last year. And I know he was hurt 2 games in the year, but still, Matt Stafford could ball. He just didn't want to play, it seemed like, because it was the Lions. He gave his heart out to the Lions, which shows you the loyalty that he has. He's more of an LA kid, so he's going to like it a lot more out here. They have a great run game with Cam Akers going on there. They got it going at the perfect time of the season. Cam Akers, another fantasy running back to probably get within the first 3 rounds. If he falls that deep, I think he'll be a first or second rounder, depending on how big your draft is. But Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee, Van Jefferson, Cam Akers. He has a lot, and he has great coaching with Sean McVay, one of the best defenses. Only problem is that defense is going to only get in the way when they have to get into a slugfest, and it's 7-7, and you're like, wow, the Matt Stafford. But I don't see the Matt Stafford having problems too much against the NFC West. He'll go off on the Seahawks. He'll go off on the Cardinals for sure. The Cardinals defense has gotten better with Chandler Jones and Budda Baker, but still, I like Matt Stafford and his weapons a lot more. Joe Burrow has a lot of potential. He runs on the ground as well, but Matt Stafford is a baller, and we have seen the Lions hold him back. The Rams are a legit NFC team. They will bring the best out of Matt Stafford. So Joe Burrow, the Cincinnati Bengals still have some growing pains to do. They're not going to just be great this year. T. Higgins is going to be a good beneficiary, but like I said, without Joe Mixon, that run game's obsolete, and then they're just going to rush Joe Burrow the whole time. Justin Herbert against Tom Brady. Super Bowl champion. Tom Brady is coming off his high of being a Super Bowl champion as the 8th ranked quarterback last year in fantasy football. Threw for 4,600 yards, 40 touchdowns, and 12 picks. The guy's 43 years old and doing this. I don't know how to explain it. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before. Tom Brady has all the weapons. He has Chris Godwin. He has Mike Evans. I don't know if Antonio Brown's coming back because I think he wants more money, but he still has Scotty Miller, Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard, and Gronkowski, along with Lenny Fournette and Ronald Jones in the backfields. He has everything he wants and more. Tom Brady has the right weapon for the end zone in Mike Evans. He has the guy to go 20-20 in Chris Godwin. He has a guy who could do sneaky short routes and kind of sneaky deep routes because you saw him burn Kevin King in the NFC Championship in Scotty Miller. Cameron Brate also gets open and is a red zone target. O.J. Howard, another third down guy / red zone target. Gronk, another third down guy / red zone target. All I'm hearing is a bunch of guys who are red zone targets, but the only problem is Bruce Arians said it himself. He wants to run the ball 60% of the time because that's the only way to open up the pass. Now, that's obvious football, and it's probably what every coach is saying, but if he's saying it, that means you know they want to run the ball a lot with Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette. Tom Brady has built a culture not of fantasy football, but of I want to win. And it's time to win, and whatever we're going to do to win, we'll run the ball, and I'll throw the ball 20 times in a game. Because Tom Brady gave you a couple of games where he gave you 12 and 10 fantasy points just because they don't have to do that. That's not in the game plan. Now, Justin Herbert, on the other hand, has an extremely heavy fantasy offense. Not only is he going to have to struggle against Patrick Mahomes and go in a shootout with them, but in the Raiders, they're in a shootout every year. The last 3 years, every single Raider game versus Charger game has gone over 20 points. So if they're scoring 20 points each, you know Justin Herbert's going to at least score 2 touchdowns. They have Austin Eckler. They just added Jared Cook, who's a great red zone threat. They have Keenan Allen, one of the best route running receivers in the league. And they have Mike Williams, who's a great deep threat. They have Guyton, too, who's another good deep threat. They always find guys who are good deep flyers. Justin Herbert showed last year in his rookie-breaking performance with the most passing yards and passing touchdowns in rookie history, 4,300 yards, 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. The 9th-ranked quarterback is younger. I like the age on his side. I like the fantasy-friendly offense, and I like the division where he's going to have to get in shootouts with a lot of teams. Justin Herbert is someone that I trust more than Tom Brady in fantasy football. Don't get me wrong. Fantasy football. I'm not saying real life, actual NFL, because we all know that Tom Brady, you never count him out. Tampa Bay. Next matchup, Josh Allen versus Ryan Tannehill. Josh Allen, the number one quarterback out of fantasy football, just got richer. The Buffalo Bills obtained Emmanuel Sanders along with Cole Beasley, that Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs. I keep saying him all day, but he has all the weapons in the world with Devin Singletary and Zach Moss in his backfield. It is not gonna always be the rushing the ball type of game for the Buffalo Bills. If they're rushing it, it's going to be with the legs of Josh Allen. He still rushed for over 400 yards this last season. Josh Allen does it all. He throws it. His completion percentage and his QBR and the yards he throws per game has all gone up every single year, especially since Sean McDermott has taken over as head coach. He's developed into a great quarterback. It stinks that he has to go against Ryan Tannehill. I'm really high on Ryan Tannehill just because he was a 7th-ranked fantasy quarterback. He had a sneaky year with 3,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, and only 7 picks. Ryan Tannehill had 5 games where he had over 20 fantasy points, and it helps a lot to have a great wide receiver 1 in A.J. Brown and a great running back in Derrick Henry. Everyone's going to focus in on them. They just added Josh Reynolds, who I think is a fully capable receiver to take over the Corey Davis role because Corey Davis just left. Only problem is he's not Josh Allen. He doesn't have a great wide receiver 1 like Stephon Diggs, who's probably going to be the number 1 fantasy receiver going into next year. Not going into next year, at the end of next year. I think he'll finish in front of Devontae Adams. Ryan Tannehill has all the weapons and he has the sauce, but Josh Allen, they rely on him way too much in that offense. They don't rely on Ryan Tannehill like they do with Josh Allen. I like Ryan Tannehill over Tua, Sam Darnold. I even like Ryan Tannehill over Russell Wilson and Joe Burrow and Tom Brady. So everyone I've eliminated, I like Ryan Tannehill over all of them. But he's going against the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football last year, and Josh Allen is the man. He's getting better as the years go on, and they're giving him more and more weapons. I trust him, and I trust that fantasy offense. Kirk Cousins going against Jalen Hurts. Kirk Cousins, the 11th-ranked fantasy quarterback, threw for 4,200 yards, 35 touchdowns, had 18 turnovers, though, as typical Kirk Cousins. He's not that clutch, doesn't come up in big games, but puts big fantasy numbers, and he has the weapons. He has Dalvin Cook, who rushed over 1,500 yards last year. He has Justin Jefferson, who had over 1,400 yards last year. He had Justin Jefferson, who was the 8th-ranked fantasy receiver last year, and Adam Thielen, the 10th-ranked fantasy receiver last year. So that just shows you how big of a fantasy offense that is. Jalen Hurts, he's going to get his first crack at being the starting quarterback for the Eagles. He threw for 1,061 yards last year, 6 touchdowns, 6 turnovers, nothing spectacular, but this is going to be his first year with a new head coach. He has Miles Sanders in the backfield. I like Jalen Hurts just for the fact that there's not much film on him. So I think he's going to take the league kind of by storm, especially fantasy football. You like rushing quarterbacks, especially in their first couple of years at going at it, because this is before they get hurt, before they deal with the RG3 legs and all this other stuff that comes with being a mobile quarterback. Jalen Hurts is going to get the first crack at being a good mobile quarterback. They're going to run the offense completely through him. They gave him, the keys to the car. It's his town in Philadelphia. I trust him more than Kirk Cousins because you've seen the best of Kirk Cousins. Dalvin Cook did rush over 300 times last year, so you know how big of a chunk Dalvin Cook's going to take out of that offense. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be the whole offense. He's going against terrible defenses in the Dallas Cowboys, and I guess the Giants are picking it up because they're picking up more defensive guys, but I still have to see it. Jalen Hurts I like over Kirk Cousins on a sneaky quarterback I like. I don't like Jalen Hurts over Russell Wilson. I like him over Joe Burrow. I don't like him over Tua. I like him over Tua too, and I like him over Sam Darnold. I also like him over Tom Brady, but not Ryan Tannehill. So that kind of shows you where I put Jalen Hurts. I'm just telling you, they don't have a playbook or film on him, and he's a rushing quarterback. The first years of rushing quarterbacks are usually the best ones. So you could get him on a breakout year. He could fail, but he could not. And in a tough matchup, Aaron Rodgers, the league MVP, is now going the number 2 quarterback in fantasy football, who threw for 48 touchdowns, a league-leading 48 touchdowns last year, 4,200 yards, only 5 interceptions, is going against Lamar Jackson, the 10th ranked quarterback who rushed for over 1,000 yards but also had 2,700 yards in the air, 26 touchdowns, and 14 turnovers. Lamar Jackson had a down year. His completion percentage went down. His QBR went down. His leading receiver was Marquise Brown, who only had 780 yards. After that was a tight end, so that just showed you his distribution. He's one of the better running backs in the league that plays quarterback. But Aaron Rodgers has everything back. He's ready to go. Aaron Rodgers doesn't get hurt too often. His interceptions always stay low. His turnovers stay low. His touchdowns are high. Aaron Rodgers is a top 3, top 4 fantasy quarterback. Lamar Jackson, I just don't like him because he can't throw as well as Aaron Rodgers, and that's what it means to be a quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers can still rush touchdowns. He's still mobile enough to do it. Lamar Jackson, they figured him out, and I'm not liking it. I like Lamar Jackson over everyone else, though. Absolutely everyone else. I would get him even over Ryan Tannehill, too. But in this case, Aaron Rodgers beats him. So now Patrick Mahomes goes against Kyler Murray. Patrick Mahomes, still the 4th-ranked quarterback in fantasy football last year, has Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. What sounds better, that or Chase Edmonds, DeAndre Hopkins, and they re-signed Dan Arnold, but I mean, I guess Larry Fitzgerald? No. Those do not sound as young or even as good. Patrick Mahomes has a better arm through more passing touchdowns. He's a little older, so he's going to make probably less bad decisions than Kyler Murray would. Kyler Murray doesn't have as good of a coach as Patrick Mahomes, so that just tells you what kind of consistency he could keep up, because we don't know how good of a coach Cliff Kingsbury is. We saw the Cardinals start out hot and then fizzle and fall out of the playoffs, so who knows. Kyler Murray also has to go against the Rams' tough defense, and the Niners are coming back with everyone healthy in that tough defense. Patrick Mahomes has to go against the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Chargers twice a year. He benefits a lot off that schedule alone. Patrick Mahomes takes out Kyler Murray. Dak Prescott versus Max Stafford. This isn't even close. Dak Prescott has a way better receiving core, a way better running back in the backfield. The line's not as good, though. I will give him that. The line is not as good as Matt Stafford's line, but I like Dak Prescott more because of his legs, because he could throw for 400 yards in a game, because that's what Mike McCarthy's offenses do. It's not even as much as Dak Prescott as it is the Mike McCarthy offense. It's, let's throw 40 times. I know, Zeke's hot, but let's just throw it 40 times. We'll throw it to Zeke twice, but we'll just throw it. So I like the volume of throwing. I like the offense, as I said before. The receiving core is better. Running back's better. Not tough of an option. Kyler Murray, I would get over anyone else I've eliminated. Matt Stafford, he's not too high. He's in the middle of all the quarterbacks I've pretty much said. Justin Herbert versus Josh Allen. Justin Herbert had a breakout rookie year. Won me a fantasy championship. Got him off the waiver wires. His value was phenomenal. His value next year is not going to be as phenomenal. They're going to try to get him in the top 10 rounds. I'm not going to do it because I'd rather just wait to get Ryan Tannehill instead of having the 9th-ranked quarterback with Justin Herbert and getting him in the top 10 rounds. You could wait for Ryan Tannehill. You could wait for Kirk Cousins and be the 10th or 11th ranked quarterback and get him off the waiver wire. So it's just up to you there. Josh Allen has better weapons, not a better running game, but Josh Allen, what he lacks in his backfield, he has in his legs, so he's going to run and get all the touchdowns. Josh Allen's completely fine in that offense. I like the coaching, the organization, and the culture more in Buffalo too as well. So that puts it in. Justin Herbert is eliminated. I like Justin Herbert over pretty much everyone besides Kyler Murray. I like him over Russell Wilson. I like him over, Lamar Jackson too. I like him over Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen is now going on to the next round. He's going to go against Patrick Mahomes. Dak Prescott. Oh, no, not Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's actually waiting for the winner of Jalen Hurts versus Aaron Rodgers. Look, I sold you on Jalen Hurts. You could wait to get Jalen Hurts really late, and I love his value. Aaron Rodgers will get picked within the first 10 rounds, so I hate that too. So I love Jalen Hurts' value, but I'm not going to be a crazy man and be spouting nonsense that a Philadelphia quarterback is going to lead you to the promised land when they got lucky with Nick Foles. So Aaron Rodgers is definitely the quarterback. League MVP, led the league in touchdowns, run it back. Eagles' best receiver is who? Jalen Reagor? Oh, well, they have a guy named Devontae Adams on the Packers who had 18 touchdowns. So I don't think that's even close. And they have Robert Tonyan, as I forgot to mention. It doesn't matter if they have Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Allen Lazard. They'll make them both look good. Allen Lazard is actually not that bad of a receiver. Aaron Rodgers takes on Josh Allen. Patrick Mahomes against Dak Prescott. Wow. We got some good matchups right here at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We're breaking down each quarterback as if it was a March Madness style bracket. Right now we're in the Final Four. Patrick Mahomes against Dak Prescott. Patrick Mahomes, one of the leading passers in the NFL, versus the guy who was leading the NFL in passing yards and touchdowns before he got hurt. Both of these offenses are extremely fantasy friendly. I almost can't even decide whose offense is more fantasy friendly. If it's based on pure value alone, I'm getting Dak Prescott. Because Dak Prescott, people are going to be a little weary on him. You could wait maybe after the 10th round. I don't know how dumb people are in your league, because they should know that Dak Prescott with all these weapons is going to pop off just like he did last year. I mean, the guy's an animal. The guy threw for 1,800 yards in like 4 games. And then he had one game on the Cleveland Browns. He threw, actually, out of his 5 matchups, and when he got hurt, by the way, 3 of them, he threw over 450 yards. Against Atlanta, 450 yards, a touchdown, and a rushing touchdown. Seattle, 472 yards, 3 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown. Cleveland, 502 yards in the air and 4 touchdowns. Dak Prescott, gotta love him. That offense is great, but he got hurt, and Patrick Mahomes hasn't got hurt like that. It hasn't been a season-ending, I broke my leg injury. So, based on that alone, I have to go with it, because you can't even knock me off. Patrick Mahomes still has Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, the 2 best pass catchers in the NFL, out of probably 2 out of top 5 best pass catchers in the NFL. Couldn't tell in the Super Bowl, and that's another reason why I'm getting Patrick Mahomes, because he's on a revenge tour. Josh Allen versus Aaron Rodgers. Josh Allen's going to have all the weapons in the world, and he has his legs. That helps him a lot. Aaron Rodgers has not all the weapons in the world. He's just more efficient than Josh Allen, and this is not his first rodeo. Josh Allen has been on the incline ever since Sean McDermott's been there. I'm riding the Josh Allen wave. I like his weapons a lot more. He has 4 receivers that are awesome. Aaron Rodgers, yes, has a better line. Yes, has a run game. And yes, has a better defense to give him the ball more, because he has the second best secondary. According to the Packers have the second best secondary according to Pro Football Focus. I love that about it. But Josh Allen has 4 studs at wide receiver that you could pick up on the waiver wire any given week and would be completely fine with the results you would get with them. I like Josh Allen. So Josh Allen is going to go against Patrick Mahomes. At the end, the 4th ranked quarterback and the number 1 ranked quarterback are going against each other. Let me know what you think at GSMC Fantasy Football on Twitter. DM us, tag us on Twitter. Do whatever you have to do. Be loud as you can. Let me know if I'm right with all my analysis, because I'm giving you numbers, and I'm giving you, even numbers from other people. I'm giving you their situations. I'm giving you the coaching. I'm giving you what the playbook's saying. I'm giving you absolutely everything that has to do, the context that goes along with this. So now, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, who's a better head coach? Andy Reid or Sean McDermott? We've already seen in the playoffs, Andy Reid. Who's better? Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen? Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen have a similar arm, but Patrick Mahomes is not as raw as Josh Allen. Josh Allen's still fixing his quarterback mechanics. Patrick Mahomes is, if anything, just learning how to read defenses better. Josh Allen relies on his legs too much. Patrick Mahomes uses his legs to survive and get people open to create separation. So I got to give it to him there. He's an elite scrambler. They're both elite scramblers. Josh Allen does have more weapons, yes. I like Patrick Mahomes' backfield more than I do the Buffalo Bills. I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire way more than I would Zach Moss or even Devin Singletary. I know that's not the point of the Bills, but still, I like that a little better. Patrick Mahomes also just lost Super Bowl, and I think that's a big, huge driving force in what's going to happen this upcoming year. He's going to be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football. I see him throwing almost 5,000, 50 touchdowns. That's just me. But I am just a Ryan Basulto, and I was just your host for the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for listening. Remember to like, subscribe, share, follow us at GSMC Fantasy Football on Twitter, Facebook, and everywhere else where GSMC football is. I would like to thank all you guys for listening as we are trying to build you up to be champions. For the rest of the month, we're mainly going to talk about the draft. And there's a lot of good people like Najee Harris. Who knows where he may go to? Who knows where these quarterbacks are going to go to? It's going to lead to a lot of fantasy implications. But yes, thank you for tuning into the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.